So, hi everybody and welcome back. This is a C++ tutorial series for absolute beginners. This is video 126, and in this video we are talking about multi-dimensional arrays. So we already talked about arrays much, so we know how the declaration works. Let's repeat this fast and create first an array, because then I will show you how to make a multi-dimensional array. But let's create an array first and repeat the syntax. So let's write here syntax, and we make this to train a little bit these formal descriptions here, because this side here is a formal description, which means if you understand this in the future, then you will understand also the official papers, because this one is a copy of that, but a little bit more simpler than the official papers. So let's go. Okay, this one we learned in our last video how to create this. Let's make this, and here the black colors means this one we take to our code directly, which is here just this array, and the other ones here, the gray ones, we have to define. And when it says optional, we can define it or not, but we have to know exactly what happens if we define it or not. Let's do it fast. In the last video we already did, and an array means all time a list, which means we want to put in many data, and we have to define what kind of data. For example, scores, and then we say, okay, scores are data type int, because scores are numbers, so I want to put in many numbers which are scores. And how we make this, we start with the, which says here, with a declarator. A declarator is most time a name, and the name has many specifiers in front. For example, here the data for our array elements is int, is a specifier called a type specifier, and here the variable name, I call it database user scores. And then we have here this one, we can see it's in black color, which means just take it, and all the other one are defined by us. So this one we can take it directly, which means we have nothing to do. And then we have to choose, do we provide an expression? In this case means, do we say how many elements we want in the array or not? I say no, because I will write this in a Schlazer list. And important is, if you provide here no expression, for example, and you would stop normally here, that works not all time, because you have to know how to use it then. In this case, we need an initializer list is one option, perhaps there are others. You can, and then I say, okay, let's write some scores, and it must be of the type int, the scores which I'm right, which means full numbers can be negative and positive, but in an int range. So I write here, for example, here this scores, and that's it. With that said, I have declared one array, and this array is one-dimensional. Why it is called one-dimensional array? Because here you can see we have many entries, and when we call them from, it is like so, it is said we have only one array here, and that's why one dimension. And this word dimension comes normally from math. It's not something what a programmer defines, but in our case we are more interested in programming, so I make it simple. But if you have, of course, math knowledge, then it will become much easier for you. If you don't have math knowledge, no worry, we are concentrating on very simple things here, which means just one dimension means here just one array. For example, one curly bracket, start curly brackets, and one stop curly brackets. This is our one dimension. So how we make one more dimension? And for that we scroll down where it says multi-dimensional arrays, and you can see here an example. And actually a multi-dimensional array is absolutely simple. You add just one more array after the first one, which means in our example, I have here one array. I add after this one more, and then I have two-dimensional. arrays. But here we have a problem. Let me copy this one and show you something. The problem is here. If I add here one more array, for example, this will cause a problem because this example here, what we can see here, works only if we use an expression in the array. You can see they used here something. Here in our declaration, this is optional, but in this case, if you use there something, then it works, and here it's not really working because I have not used it. So I can't use this version here, at least not yet. Because when we watch later, there is something, arrays of unknown bounds, which we will not cover yet, but of course you can read a little bit more and see what it means. Then there are options when you can use it and when you can't use it. But let's skip this part because we want to create first and understand first dimensional arrays. And we make it similar to this example here. So I make here, instead of this array version, we also learned the other array version, right? How was it? First of all is the same. Let's call this here user IDs, perhaps the user ID. And then I say, okay, the user ID, let's say how many I want. I want, for example, also 3. Here I have 3 here. I want also 3 user ID. And that was the second version, right? To create arrays. And then we can use an initializer. In this case here, again, this assignment operator. And I initialize this all to 0 most time. And how I do this? Just this curly brackets, which is empty. And this one will initialize all the 3 elements to 0. Good. So far we know all things, and now I said, okay, to create a multidimensional array, we just add here one more array, which is just this brackets, but we have to provide this expression here. And this expression in this case means how many elements you want, because this kind defines the elements in it, in this array. All right, let's make first the array symbol here. So I made one more array, and let's say also 3. And this is called then two-dimensional array. And why two-dimensional now? Very simple. This is only one array, one dimension. This has 2 arrays here, 2 dimensions. And if I would make even one more, let's copy here, let's make a more, the next one, and call it database 3-dimension array, just for fun. This one is not a real name, but it describes what it is. And we can make a 3-dimension array just by adding one more array for it. And of course it must be not all time the same number. Let's do this one here too. And you can see, very simple. This multidimensional arrays, go here again to the multidimensional arrays, means just we are adding a dimension by one array after the first one, then here, and then so on. But that's fine so far. But how we are assigning the values, because now we learned, okay, if I want to make a more dimensional array, I just add an array, additional array, and I express how many elements the next one has. But how this is created, right? Let's watch this again. The first one was created here. I create an array, which means this array is a list, yes, and I put the elements in it. And here I put this int 43. But how I do this one now with this two-dimensional arrays? And there are different ways, and some are good, some are not so good. And this one you should read on the books, which perhaps you find a better way. But I show you one way, which I find it's very simple. You start all time with the from right, and then go to left, and then you can create them very easy. Why? You say the last one are the elements which I have, and the other ones in front are just arrays which will be created depends on these 3 elements at the last one. What I mean with that in a moment. Let's start. First of all, let's create this one here. And I said from right to left. First, the first array. Okay. I created the first array, and this first array, to make it more readable for the programmer, we start with a curly brackets for its own. So we start with this curly brackets. This curly brackets here is now represents this one, and I need 3 elements in it. Okay, let's put there 3 elements in it. I create them, so I have now 3 elements in it. That's that. Perfect. And then I said, okay, now we go to the left. So this array goes to the left, means I need now another array with 3 elements. And what means that? That means you take, and that's very important that you make this right. That means you take this one and make of the first one, from this one, again, 3 of this one here. It means not copying, it means just 3 elements and 3 of this kind of array, from this curly brackets to this curly brackets. Let me show you what it is. It's then easier. And yeah, and sometimes they are not putting them side by side. First I put it side by side, and then I put it not side by side. So let's go 3 of the first one, which means here's my first, and I have to put again some values in it. Okay. And now, but this is only 2, I need 3 of them, so I need one more time. Let's do this again. This curly brackets here, and again these 3 elements. All right, oops, make it something so, and then I'm finished. And what I did here is, you can see I started from the right side with 1 and created the 3 elements. This is one array. And the next array said, okay, I need from the one which I created 3 times of this first one. And the 3 times means 1 time, 2 times, and 3 times, but not the values, only just the array here. All right. So this is one way to create it. And then there was something else what I wanted to show you, because if the array is very long, it is hard to read. So what many programmers do to make it readable, they say we can just go to the next line like so, and this one looks now like a, they call it from math, a matrix. And the matrix has, this is more a little bit knowledge about math, where if you don't have, no worry. Matrix means here, we can see it here, what they call it, can be viewed as a 2 by 3 matrix. This is a term in math. If you don't know it, no worry, because there you can make then special calculations with this kind of stuff, or you can call it in a special way, which they call with row measure layout. So which means a row is here, 1 row, second row, this is the first one, and all the 3 one has 3 elements in it. And they are different kind of this description here. And yeah, but important is you can make this as a matrix, but of course you can make it in one line too. The compiler don't care how you order it. It must be just right. So with that said, we created this one, and let's train this one for this one too, because now we have this one. Let's see if we can do this one for a train. And yeah, let's see. We start again with the right time, then we go to the left, then we go from there to this left. How we make this? And yeah, I copied this curly brackets because I need them all time. And I start with this curly brackets, right? This is my first array. And the first array has 2 elements from right to left. Okay, 2 elements here. Right, 2 elements. And so I finished this one. I copied this one just so that I write it a little bit faster. So the second array says, I need from the first array 3 of it, 3 times of it, okay? 3 of this, let's make it. not the same numbers, of course. You can change the numbers, just the arrays. All right, let's say here I have 3 of it, and if you have 3 of this one, don't forget you have here to set around this one an array too. And why you have to set around this one an array as well, because these are the array for this one. All right, now I copy this one here. I copy this one, and the next array says, the third one says, okay, now you have this one, and I need from these 2 arrays, which you already created, 3 of them. Okay, that will look really hard to read on one line. That's why I say I go to the next line. I copy it because, like I said, it's a little bit hard to read for us. And that's why we make it this way. It's easier. And then I paste this one. And yes, I made it. And that was fast. That was good. And it should be right. So that works also. But of course, you could also go here down, and here down. And this is just for presentation. The compiler don't care how you go down. Just make it right. And yeah, you see, of course, these numbers here you can change again, because the numbers are here not so important. The important is that you make the arrays right. Here again, we started with 2. These two are one array. Yes, here with the curly brackets, one array. Then the second one says I need from the first 2 3 times. Okay, I created 1, 2, 3, and then I enclose them with an array, this curly brackets here. And the last one says I need from this 2 3. Okay, I added here 2 more, then we have 3. Perfect. All right. I hope that's a little bit clear. You should train this on your own, create some arrays, and try to make it right. But we need one more step, which is we have learned to create an array, but how we are using that. So how I'm going to use that. And then we have here some examples. Don't worry about this decay. We learned this a little bit later, because a pointer and array have a special relationship. And yeah, we will skip this part actually. We will create now something, how to use that, and how we create something to use that, right? And we start with this, let's make this little one here, because this one is a little bit more. And how we use an array, we already used something like in our exercise with database, right? When you hear database, which means it's like a list has many entries and we are interested in this element, then we use what? What was it? We use loops, right? So that we not go one by one with hands and try to find it. And that same goes for the multidimensional also, because here it's even more. For example, here I loop about 3, here I loop about 9, and here I would even loop around many things, and that will take too much time. So we use loops instead. And how we are using these loops, that's very interesting, because these are nested loops to call this multidimensional arrays. Let's try this. So let's go down here. And I say, okay, I want loop through this database, and I want print out all these values. So this is my task, right? And it works similar to the one-dimensional array, but like I said, this time we need 2 loops, because we have looping through one array, and then we will loop through the second array. And how we are looping, that's also interesting, because you will see why in a moment. Let me show. Let's write a loop. Let's write a for loop, which we know already, for. And then we start with a start point, int 0, right? Int I, sorry, first of all, the variable name, int I equal to 0. This is our start point. Then we define the endpoint. That's very important for loops. So we say as long as e is less than, in our case, we need now the yes, the amount of loops which we want. And in this case, the first loop has 3 elements. The second has also 3 elements. And I define first one loop for this array. And later I define another loop for this array. So I start again from the right side and say the first loop less than 3 elements. Careful. 3 elements means we have here 3 elements. That's okay. But an array starts all time with what we learned, with 0, the slot name. Here it points out the element, but the array itself, when you call it, it starts from 0, 1, 2. That's all time a little tricky. So we have to calculate this. Here it says here 3 elements, which are this 3. But when it starts with 0, I must say 0, 1, 2. Okay, 2 is my last element, which means I have, say, less than 3. Careful. I still say here 3, but I say less than 3. When I say less than 2, it will mean 0, 1, but I have 3 elements, 0, here 0, 1, and 2, and when it comes to 3, it will not execute. All right. I hope this is clear from, this is standard array call. And because this array is just the first array, okay, with that said, we have defined our for loop, at least the start, and let's call the body. And of course, I forgot here something, the increment, sorry for that. And then we increment this one, and plus plus I. We know also this is the shortcut, our incrementing symbol for I. I hope this is clear by now. So the next step is I defined one loop for the first array here. Right, I need now define a second loop for this array here, because now I'm looping just through this one and it will stop. Okay, which means we can copy actually this loop here and write here another loop in, paste in, and then we can say, okay, this loop, it is called here, and then it goes here to the second loop, which is called here, and then I want that you loop through this array, and in this case it has also 3 elements. That's very handy, so I can keep all this one here. If it has, for example, not 3 elements, for example 4 elements, of course, then I have to adjust these numbers here a little bit. But in this case, 3 elements, okay, that's perfect. Then what can we do next? And I said I want print out all the values of this array, which I have here. And okay, which means just very simple, std cout, our standard output, right? And how I'm doing this, that's the question. How I'm putting out now a multi-dimensional array. In this case, I made another mistake. What is the mistake? Can you spot it? Watch these 2 lines here. What is the mistake? It's a mistake because I used here I, but this time I use here for the next loop I too. And this can cause problems, at least confusion. To avoid this, we have to use here another variable. For example, let's use here I and k, and k, and k, and this little variable names in a for loop, it's absolutely clear what it means. It is a start point, it is a comparison point for the end point, and it means just the increment. That's why here, this is one of these places where you can use a short variable name, and it is absolutely clear in compared to other places where you should not. All right, so that said, now it's clear. Now I know this I is for the first for loop, this k is for the second for loop. That's much more clear. I can now distinguish these two loops very nice. And now my goal is still to print out the value, right? But how I do this, similar to our normal one-dimensional array, you say if you want the first one, we set slot 0, which means if I 0, then print this one out. But here it will do what? Look what happens here. But let's call this first. I want print out this array. So first of all, I start with the name, of course. Let's copy this one here. Here's the name, and I have to specify these two slots, right, to print it out. So when I press here, say here, the first array is I, the second is K, and then let's make here something. Let's make here a new line. Should we? Yeah, let's make here a new line. Why not? And let's make this one. And now try to guess what happens here. Is this right? Before I start this, try to think about this. What happens here? Let's think together a little bit, and then I start this and see what happens. So first of all, this loop starts, it jumps here. Then at the first time this loop was 0, this was less than 3, it's okay. It will increment later. Okay, then it jumps here to this loop, and here the first K is 0, and then it checks the comparison and it will increment. So the first thing what we see here is 0, 0, and the value on 0, 0, 0, 0 is means. Let's see what it means here in our multi-dimensional array. 0 at this point means, let's start again from right to left, so it's all time the same. 0 at this point means, okay, it must be one of this numbers which is on the 0, also in front. The second array says, okay, this is my 0, this is my 1, and this is my 2. So here it must be in this array because 0 is here, and 0 means here 0, 1, 2, so it must be here. So we expect in the first run here are 4, and let's write here expect 4 in first place with 0, 0. And if you want to see this a little bit more accurate, you can also do something like that, because this one is nice, but yeah, you want to see perhaps this value I and K also. And then we do something like so that it makes easier for us and say, okay, print out I value. And then you say, here, let's make here a semicolon. Not a semicolon, a comma. And let's print out the K value. And here we print out a new line. So, and this one gives us additional and this one gives us additional informations what I and K is. And when I start now this one, let's see what happens. It will print out all, but we are interested in the first line here. And what happens here? 0, 0 is indeed 4. Hey, that was what we expected. At least that was correct. So let's see the next line. What we expect for the next line. Just so in case, let's check this one out. Okay, we have here, we have the next line. It loops, but here, careful. It started with this loop, right? It jumped in this loop. But this loop must finish first, because this loop has this local call here, and this is the scope, and after this one here is finished, it is not going to this finish, because this loop checks its condition, which is K less than 3, and as long as this condition is not true, it will loop all time here. So, which means This loop, which is the second one, will stay where it is, and we learned this is the array, this one, and the second loop, which is all the numbers in it, will loop now through it. So which means it will go to the second one and then to the third one. So we expect for 0 0 was 4, and for 0 5 we expect a 5, 0 1 we expect a 5, and for 0 2 we expect a 7. So these are the next numbers. The next numbers should be 4 5 7, and when I start, we have here indeed 4 5 7, and here are how the loop is going through. So I will not go on as a training. You should do this by yourself. Create an array and create even more a complicated array like this one, and try to figure out if you can create like a three-dimensional array perhaps, and try to get these numbers, because this is very important for databases actually, which we will talk in future, but they will not really use arrays. There are better, let's say, better array variations. They are not called arrays, then they are called other things, but they are working similar, only in a better way. You have more features, and you have to get used to this one, especially to this for loop calls, because you really don't want to go one hand by hand, for example, about this one, about a three-dimensional array. And yeah, this one you should train, and this one you should also learn in the documentation in good C++ books or online documentation, how a multidimensional array works, because this one you will definitely need in databases, and databases are actually very important in programming, because every project will use anyhow databases anywhere, anytime. Most projects, let's say so. That's why very important to learn, and arrays are the start point where we have to this one. So with that said, we have to cover a little bit more about arrays, but there is one more important thing which we have to cover, and the other things are also important, of course, but this one important thing what I'm talking about is what is that here? It's called array of unbound. Yeah, that's also important. That was what I said, what happens if this array is not defined, these numbers, but actually not this one. More what I'm talking about is, where is it here? Yeah, array to pointer. We have not talked about array to pointer. That's very big topic again, and it is a little bit confusing, but it is important, and we will talk about this in future too. But this is the last big thing with arrays which we talk. All other things are also important, but not so a big topic like this multidimensional array and this array to pointer. This kind of stuff you have to know. If you want, you can read also soon array to pointer decay in theory, because it's much of a theoretical part, and try to go on documentations on online books or anything like that and read this. It is also a little bit about storage and addresses again, and that's why I say it's a little bit more theoretical. And if you understand this there, and then watch the thing what I do here in a practical way, then it should be work out. So with that said, I hope you train nice this kind of stuff and figure it out. One last thing, perhaps. One last thing. What is the let's say, what is the type of this array? Like all time, use the trick if you don't know it. You can put here and pointer, start it, and then this is a debug. And then it's go one more step, because it now it reads this line here. Right now it is here. to at this line, it's pointed out it's this line, which means it has only read one line of this one. And when we go to database user ID, which is this one here, we can see the type here on the right side. It says it's an int, also array of three ints. All right, so again, careful about this type thing. But for a programmer, we don't care about the array type, because this is the array type. We care only what we put in the array, and we are putting here just ints in this case. These are just ints, and that's why we are interested in this one here, because later we are using just these elements here, and this will be an int, which means later I can assign this value to a variable int, and then I can use the variable int. I don't care about this array type, which I not use really. I need to know it for special cases, which is which has something to do with pointer. When you read this pointer to decay, then you will probably need that. All right, with that said, I hope you trained this. I hope you understand it. And yeah, if you have any questions or any complaints like all time, write it in the comments. See you in the next. Bye and good luck.